Now, he's called Pope Francis a son of a bitch and told Barack Obama to go to hell. But now the president of the Philippines says he'll stop swearing after what he says was a direct intervention from God. Rodrigo Duterte said it happened while he was flying back from Japan.
Everybody was asleep, snoring. But a voice said that, if you don't stop, if that's, I will bring this plane down now. And I said, who is this? So of course it's God. Okay. So I promised God to not to express slang, cuss words, and everything.
But will President Duterte be able to keep his promise? He's made a name for himself with colourful language and statements. Early this month, when talking about his domestic drug crackdown, he compared himself to Hitler, saying he'd kill as many addicts and dealers as Hitler did Jews. When the United Nations criticised his war on drugs, they were on the receiving end of a telling off when he threatened to separate from the UN, calling experts stupid. In September, he launched an expletive-laden attack on the European Union after it too condemned his crackdown. Duterte said the EU Parliament was acting out of guilt and hypocritical. Former colonial powers are trying to atone for their own sins. And perhaps the best known of his outbursts, a meeting between Duterte and Barack Obama in September, cancelled after he called the US president a son of a whore. Previously, he'd called the Pope the same. Well, with me now is an expert on diplomatic protocol, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, I suppose most of your clients don't come to you after a message from God, but is it common to see a kind of turnaround, wanting to change one's image?
Absolutely. There are some politicians for whom it is advantageous to be seen as being an unorthodox leader. We think about people like Hugo Chavez, or even the former Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Trudeau, son of the current Prime Minister, or Boris Yeltsin. These were colourful characters who flouted convention, flouted the orthodoxies of protocol in order to engage with the grassroots and be seen as something different, a breath of fresh air. However, in examples like this, I think there are cases where you can go too far. The world of protocol and diplomacy is a finely tuned art form where every word is analysed for hidden meaning, but there's not that much hidden meaning in some of the utterances we've heard from the President of the Philippines.
And when it comes from a politician, I mean, what do you think are the reasons behind it?
Well, certainly I think there's a clear desire on the part of the President of the Philippines to be seen as somebody is a man of the people, doesn't have any of the old boys network attachments that perhaps in this country we always identify members of the elites with. But certainly there are repercussions for that, and certainly the repercussions, for example, of having the President of the United States cancel your meeting. You need to temper the home audience appeal with the realities of leading an international life.
I'm imagining that the diplomatic protocols and the right things to do in certain situations are a lot more subtle that you focus on generally than hearing, expletive-laden outbursts coming in public like we have in this case.
That's right. I teach a lot of leaders about cross-cultural. For example, small gestures which can be taken entirely the wrong way in different cultures, and even things such as humour. The Germans, for example, never understand in British business meetings why we always inject jokes and humour, and they think that we're not taking them very seriously.
Is that true? Across the board, can you say that about all German diplomacy? It doesn't get the British humour?
In business and in diplomacy, certainly the Germans often think that we're not taking matters too seriously, particularly in business. Similarly, in America, you'll see a much more informal approach to business meetings, perhaps more of the swearing that the President of the Philippines is used to in certain areas, which won't go down very well in a city board meeting, for example.
So basically, you're dealing with things that are an awful lot more subtle at a diplomatic level than hearing swear words like this.
That's right.
People that need to be told that these signs actually exist and that they might be crossing over a boundary by doing certain things.
The smallest international diplomatic event takes weeks, if not months, of careful choreography between both parties to ensure that everything has every aspect of symbolic meaning highlighted and identified.
And what sort of things, I mean, tell us more about the sort of difficulties that people can run into coming up against different cultures in these formal situations.
Well, for example, gift giving is a classic example. There are some gifts which are appropriate to give in some cultures. Bottles of whiskey are always appreciated in Japan, perhaps not if you're going to the Middle East. In fact, the wearing of shoes and the putting one's feet up or crossing one's legs in some cultures are regarded as offensive if the sole of one's foot is facing your host. There's a small matters for some people in the West, for example, which you wouldn't even think twice about. Even the presentation of a business card should be presented with two hands if you're in parts of Asia.
Really?
And if you don't give due accord to the card and look at it appropriately when putting it into your pocket, that in itself can be seen as a snub by some traditionalists. So it is a veritable minefield for those people who actually don't take a little bit of effort to brush up on the local knowledge.
And when you have people rising to power, coming from different backgrounds, there is more to learn, I'd imagine, than somebody who's grown up in this world all the way through, like somebody from a royal family.
That's right. Royalty are the best practitioners of diplomacy and international protocol because they've had an entire lifetime to get trained on the job and to learn by osmosis and experience watching other people. And our royal family are classic examples. It's a lot more difficult if you have been plunged into the world of politics relatively soon, but certainly a lot of politicians don't want to learn all of this and feel that it's meaningless. It doesn't take too long before they realise that. We saw that with President Obama, who during a state visit to the United Kingdom began to speak during the national anthem, thinking it was background music for his loyal toast.
Fascinating. And when somebody learns these protocols, does it generally last? I mean, in the end, if you have a colourful figure like President Duterte or Donald Trump, will it just be a veneer and the plain speaking eventually shows through again?
I think essentially people are still people in the end of the day, and you can't, leopard can't change its spots, but certainly a leopard can wear different coats. And when it comes to public life, people soon learn the advantages that acting in the correct way, behaving in the correct manner, it yields untold rewards if done correctly. And so it's in everyone's best interest to try and abide by the rules of protocol. They exist for a reason, they've worked for centuries, and certainly those people who do practice it tend to be the great successes in life.
Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, thank you very much indeed. Interesting
Pleasure.
to talk to you.